In this video, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on the seeming problems with non-dualism and how the mind tries to conceptualize it and create a philosophy out of it, and what you need to watch out for as you walk that path. I'm not at the higher levels of awakening, not at the higher levels of consciousness, right? I am here burning away as much conditioning and deprogramming and everything as much as I possibly can. Now, I've had experiences on psychedelics in particular, but also not on psychedelics as well, in sometimes in meditation, and sometimes I've been in the middle of a game of squash, for example, whereby a complete sense of I completely burnt away, completely dissolved itself. But that isn't a natural state for me right now. So I can only communicate to you where I'm at. And it seems that there's a contraction of energy that divides consciousness as an ocean. It sort of, to use a metaphor, and it sort of contracts that into that sense of I-ness, which we then call an ego structure. And the vast majority of people are operating from this sense of I-ness. The non-dualists, the radical ones, would suggest that there is no I at all. It's a complete illusion. And I have experienced that, but I don't live that. For me, every day I'm operating a business. I do deals in the capitalist corporate world, and I love doing that. The ego juices that for me, for this individual. So I can't suggest here that I know what non-dualism is as an abiding state. I can't sit here and say that authentically to you. But what I see in the non-dualistic world, particularly on YouTube, it's very much a repetition of ideas and of beliefs. And the likes of Tony Parsons and Jim Newman, for example, Andreas Muller as well, he's great. It's very easy to see that these guys are completely real with what they're saying. There's nothing coming out of them that is inauthentic at all. They're not trying to copy one another. There is no repetition going on. It's all very, very real. But what I see from other people is that they're using the same terminology, the same phrases that, for example, Tony Parsons will be using. Now that's, whatever. I use phrases other people use all the time. It's not I'm not putting these people down by any stretch. But if you're going out there, go straight to the people who are living this, who are a living example of what they're talking about. Because it's very easy to grasp onto people's concepts, grasp onto people's belief systems, which the ego needs to do to try and make sense of reality. It needs to know everything. And essentially the premise of non-dualism is that it cannot be known. Everything is one thing, so how can you know everythingness? So this is quite a big pitfall that I see, particularly on YouTube. But also if you do a lot of reading, as I do, I'm in that phase where I still consume a lot of seeming knowledge. As I burn away the belief systems and everything, that knowledge tends to assist in that process until it won't anymore. And that sense of I sometimes gets energized by that, paradoxically, as I'm trying to burn it away, right? So when you're consuming this information from people, make sure that it's not just reaffirming what you want to be true, because that's what most people do all the time. Their biases, they will purposely go outside of themselves to find the information that satisfies their current biases. I do that as well. My biases are pure capitalism and egoism as a philosophy. I love people like Ayn Rand, Milton Friedman. I love that idea. I love that philosophy of complete self-responsibility, freedom in the sense of political freedom, which seems to come from the idea of capitalism. But I know all these are belief systems. I know they're just opinions based on knowledge, based on my culture, based on parents. And as I burn these things away, that sense of bias dissolves with it. It's not something you do, it's something that just happens on its own accord. So when we try and conceptualize things, particularly in the non-dualism world, Vedanta in particular, quite radical, people like Jim Newman and Tony Parsons are very radical. There's absolutely zero boundaries there, zero concepts to grapple with. As we go after these concepts, as the mind tries to grab them and take them as their own, that becomes a new bias. So it may be a more seemingly advanced bias away from the idea of just materialist consumption. It's that advancement is merely replacing one thing for another. So one of the traps on this path is you're replacing an idea of, I don't know, let's say Hinduism, which is a belief, just a religion, needs to be burnt away, with so-called non-dualism, which is just another philosophy, another belief system. But because it's seemingly closer to what you perceive now to be true, you will claim that as truth, as reality, but you're not living it. You're not at that state. You're not living that state. And this is why I'm doing this video now, is because I see that in myself. I see myself picking up these ideas, these, you could call them philosophies, although I don't think it is inherently. As an example, if you listen to my podcast with Jim Newman or Andreas Muller, that is not a philosophy, what they're speaking. That is them living. That is their aliveness. But I listen to it and I try and create a philosophy out of it. I'll pick up a book by Adi Shankara, for example, and that'll go, yeah, that makes sense to me. Yep, that backs up what Jim Newman was saying. That isn't truth. That isn't aliveness. That is killing a message. It's killing aliveness. There are seemingly stages to awakening. So I can't even remember the first one I had, in the sense of like a switch from being completely asleep to thinking, wow, the world isn't quite what I thought it was. Reality isn't what I thought it was. I don't remember that point, but I do remember certain points along the path where awareness seemed to expand somewhat, and you could never contract back to where you were before. Now, whether that's a level of ego development or whether that's a level of ego dissolution, I don't know. I'm happy to live in the unknown on that. I'm unaware. But it definitely seems like there's an expansion of energy. And as that expands, the sense of I tends to weaken itself. So although you can still function a lot in the world, there's no issue with that, particularly where I'm at right now. The level of selfishness, in the sense of everything is about you, because there is a healthy selfishness too. The selfishness, the negative selfishness, if you like, whereby everything is about you, and most people are completely unaware how selfish they are. That tends to dissolve itself, and you become a more truthful person. Now, truthfulness doesn't show up as loving and compassionate and kind and all these things. They tend to be personality traits, more so than a quality of consciousness, in my experience. So if you're looking for people who are truthful, full of truth, dedicated to the truth and of the nature of their own being, then these people, you may not come across them as, lovey-dovey, hugging each other. That's very often not the case at all. If you check out a guy called U.G. Krishnamurti, who I think is absolutely fantastic and I love his humour, he is somebody who is so not compassionate in the normal sense of the word. But if you go to a more expansive level, it's the ultimate compassion, because he burns away, he slices through every single belief systems that you have. And all that's remaining is a natural state of being. The Zen Buddhists, the more evolved ones, should we say, they're very similar. So it's quite commonly known that the masters will hit their students with a stick, because that's the moment, whereas the mind is only operating in time. So the stick brings people back, their students back into the moment, because there is no teaching, and that aligns with the non-dualist ideas. So I would suggest listening to people like Jim Newman, Tony Parsons, Andreas Muller, but be very careful with some of the other teachers. I obviously haven't seen a lot of them. I don't watch too much. I don't consume too much information, because I'm aware that my biases get filled as well. And I need to be a living expression of truth rather than just repeating other people's concepts. So I'm very conscious of who I listen to. Just be careful with other teachers who are saying the same things, but you may feel a little bit of incongruency in what they're saying. And it's not a personal thing. I think very often it's the ego that's grabbing on for them, and they like to, their ego is trying to express a teaching. This isn't a teaching. I'm not a teacher. In fact, I consider myself an anti-teacher. I don't think people need teaching. Not especially in the field of so-called awakening and spirituality, real spirituality. I don't think people need teachers. I think they need to be, they need experience. And of course, guidance helps and wise people help. But in the sense of teaching, you cannot put your ideas onto other people, which is what people want. They want your experiences as their own so they can repeat. It's not them per se, it's the ego structure in order to know. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here. Check out Jim Newman, check out Tony Parsons. Love their work, love what they say, love their message. It's not really work, but I love their message. Be sure to check out soon. It should be released within 2 weeks, all being well. I am going to be releasing a network on Mighty Networks, a platform whereby we can share this type of information. You guys can share things you find and I can share things I find, and we can expand together. We can create a network and a community where it's a self-evolving thing. I'm looking forward to releasing that. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.